All right, we are live for another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. Today, I'm joined again by TFD Senior Performance Dietitian Jack Doherty. Jack, how you feeling?
I'm good, a bit tired after the big Perth trip, but I'm very good today.
Yeah, Jack and I just spent the last couple of days meandering around Perth. We had a few business meetings out there. Very, very productive, though. Very, very cool to see. We won't go into too much details of it, but it's cool to see like a lot of different weight category sports opening up and wanting professionals to come in and talk to their athletes. And it's not just combat sports. Like we went over there and spoke to a couple of different sports about what we've learned with our experiences with combat sports and, what we can recommend to their athletes to make their experiences with making weight a lot healthier. It was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. Except for the terrible weather. Everyone kept telling me that Perth was great weather, and it definitely wasn't. So
yeah, I've been to Perth like 3 times the last 2 years, and every time I've gone, the weather is terrible. But anyway, what we're talking about today, what sparked this conversation between me and Jack that we're about to have is I saw a video the other day, and essentially it was just this fitness professional, and they were just roasting meal plans, and they were just saying it's such a big red flag when you see health practitioners or health professionals prescribing meal plans to clients with like numbers and telling them what to eat at what time. And it kind of, I wouldn't say it hit like really hit a nerve, but I was a bit like confused by it. And I thought, you know what, like, why is this such a taboo thing to talk about? Or why is it held in such disregard nowadays? Or is it even? And I started doing some more reading and asked out a few people, or I went and asked a few of my colleagues and thought, well, what do you think about it? It was very interesting conversations that followed, like it was kind of both sides. It's like, you know what, like meal plans do suck. They offer no flexibility. They don't cater to the changing schedules of people. They don't inbuild specific habits that are conducive to long-term success. And I think we have a very different perspective on all of these things because of what we do. Like in our day-to-day work, when we have athletes who need to make weight, no matter if that's a combat athlete, no matter if that's a power lifter, no matter if that's a rower, whatever it is, they have to make weight by a certain date, and there's punishments if they don't get that. So often it's very difficult to do that if you're not following a plan that has been designed specifically for your body. And that's what I want to talk about, the difference between a cookie cutter meal plan that you might get from bodybuilding.com and then getting a meal plan that comes with the support of a professional that has been specifically designed for you.
Yeah, I think that, having that conversation with yourself and many people, I just think that, there's obviously buzzwords now that like these online coaches and people like to talk about. And like, obviously the concept of intuitive eating, but if you think about intuitive eating, it's a great concept, but to be implemented effectively, you have to kind of assume a level of like nutritional knowledge. So not everyone has. So yeah, you can listen to your body, listen to your hunger cues, which is very important. But again, like if you don't have that background in nutrition, or you don't have much like a deep knowledge, then it's a lot of guesswork. And then I suppose, especially in weight category sports, we really don't have that room for guesswork in a 6 to 8 week camp.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another big thing that I've found, especially from talking to people, even seeing our clients' old meal plans that they got from other coaches or whatever, is they are, for the majority, just these like cookie cutter things that come out of online programs. And we at TFD, like we don't use online programs. We don't use a software that you put in people's, height, weight, activity levels or whatever, and they spit out the macros and then they spit out like a pre-program. I'm so against it. It would make our lives so much easier because we spend hours writing these meal plans. And the reason that I just won't allow it to happen and that I make all of our teams sit down for a couple of hours and go through all the data is so you're not getting these cookie cutter crappy plans, because I think they're really what the problem is, right? It's like, it's not so much that meal plans are the problem. It's just that crappy meal plans are the problem. Like if you come to me, Jack, and I go, hey, Jack, yeah, give me all this money. And you know what, I'm going to save time by just giving you this thing that has like, no foods that you absolutely love. And it's really just doesn't consider your schedule, doesn't consider your work schedule, that you start work at this time in mornings on this day, and then you start in the afternoons at this day, and then your training changes like this, and then your training changes on like a monthly cycle. It doesn't consider any of that. Of course, you're going to get that plan and be like, yeah, what the heck? Like, how is this even relevant for me? And how do I get results with this thing?
Yeah, I think it's also like during consultation calls, like asking them about their work schedule and training schedule. Like some athletes are training like 2 to 3 times a day, plus trying to hold down a full-time job. And if a guy's in construction, he's not going to have time to really, in the middle of work, go and cook a banana loaf for his pre-training meal. We need to give him options that are easily implemented. And that's the whole thing. Like giving a plan that's not realistic, of course, people aren't going to follow it. Of course, not going to be able to execute things properly. So it's basically talking to them, not just about their training and their food preferences, but their whole lifestyle, being able to create a flexible plan that people can implement very easily and then kind of take that stress off them. I think that's what a lot of people find with meal plans, that like it's like a dooming reality, like, oh, it's, I have to be strict, I have to do this, it's so much preparation time, I have to sacrifice so much time. But that's what we've kind of worked on for those years, of being able to create these individual plans that make people's life easier, not harder.
Yeah, I think it's a runoff from bodybuilding culture, right? I think people watch all these old films or watch these YouTube videos of how these bodybuilders eat, and they see them out with their food scales and they see them measuring every little thing to the gram. And as soon as it hits the minute on every hour of the clock, that they're just putting this food down and almost force feeding themselves. And they talk about how plain and dull and boring their food is, and that food is just fuel. And that's all it is. Food is just fuel. And I don't give a shit about the taste. I don't give a shit about how it makes you feel. I don't give a crap about any of the social aspects of it. That's terrible. Like bodybuilding culture has ruined so many things with nutrition. And that's a terrible runoff, because so many people take that opinion. It's just simply not true. Like, and you don't have to be that strict and that rigid with a plan to get good results. The thing is, like you said, Jack, it's education, right? Knowing these principles that we're trying to apply, knowing how much flex you have with each of them. Okay, I need to eat a meal here, but I'm driving the car and I might not have access. So let's just pull off to a takeaway store, and what is the best option from this takeaway that fits these principles? You're not going to derail your entire progress if you go off this plan. I think this is something that people get like really misled about, is that like, okay, 8 a.m. I have to eat, and then at 11 a.m. you absolutely have to eat, and then 2 p.m. and they'll just do whatever they can. It's like, no, understand the principles behind it, and then it makes it so much easier. But it comes from a lack of understanding, right? I think when you're getting these cookie cutter meal plans, say off bodybuilding.com, or you're just paying $70 to download something, you're not getting any of that. And that's a big thing that we do with all of our clients, right? Like all of my clients, I make them get on a call with me for the first 4 weeks, a couple times a week, 1 to 2 times a week. And we're not even talking about the meal plan or anything like that. We're talking about all of the principles. You're giving them a mini course in nutrition, because without the understanding of what's gone into that meal plan, it's just never going to happen. I say it to every single one of my clients. It's like, these are just numbers and words on a piece of paper. They mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing if you don't understand what all of them mean. And once you understand the principles that have gone behind it, it kind of lifts that veil of stress and pressure of like, oh my God, I have to follow this absolutely to a T. It's like, man, I just calculated this based on my knowledge and experience, but I could be completely wrong. And I need you to work with me so we can figure out what is right, what is wrong. How does this all work with your body? How does it work with your schedule? How does it work with your training? And then we're going to adjust on the fly and make it happen. But we can only do that when you've got this base level of nutrition knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it also comes back to something that we've, put a lot of focus on recently, which is like fostering that healthy relationship with food. So obviously the education component is part of this, like working with someone to kind of, have better their relationship with food so they can be flexible. So like we said, if their schedule gets busier, that they can not feel so stressed about this whole process. They can, they can, okay, well, I didn't prepare my food today, or today my schedule has changed and I can go to the supermarket and kind of put some stuff together. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. That's completely fine. I've got that knowledge now. I've got that healthy relationship with food. I can be flexible. I think that's with the meal plans also. Like always, in part of the questionnaire we send out is like, what's your favorite foods? That's one of the main parts that I look at when I'm creating a plan. Like, what's your favorite foods? Like people like, I don't know, obviously the big ones, Biscoff now. So they want Biscoff, and then hence why I created a Biscoff pre-workout smoothie, so I can implement that kind of in everyone's plan. That's what kind of one of the number one feedback I get recently is like, are you sure I can have all those foods? Or the shock that they can have, healthy pizzas, healthy burgers, and people kind of always resharing stuff on my Instagram or of what they're eating, and people are shocked. But again, that's the kind of individualization that we always bang on about, is that we're creating these meal plans that are reflective of someone's needs and wants, and also flexibility.
Yeah, exactly right. It's this misinformation, this miseducation that's out there that, again, like you have to eat like a bodybuilder. Like I don't want to be throwing these guys under the bus because I do respect them. I respect it as a sport and what they do and the discipline and whatever. But that's for such a small subset of the population, like such a tiny percentage of people. And I'm sure if there's people listening, bodybuilders and physique athletes, and I don't want to offend anyone saying this, but they're a bit mental, right? Like there's a lot of things that go on upstairs that probably drive that behavior before you even get into like why they got in this sport. But what I'm trying to get at is that you don't need to be this strict and you can include all of these foods on a meal plan. The meal plan itself is not so much the important thing. It's just a tool for education. But to get someone to a point where they can enjoy, Biscoff lattes and they can make homemade burgers and they can make pizzas and not feel terrible about themselves and make themselves feel guilt-free, is they have to have a certain level of nutrition education. That's why they're coming to us. That's why they're coming to us, to get this knowledge and to improve their relationship with food, improve their training, improve their recovery, improve their performance. To do all of that, you have to lay a foundation of knowledge with them. They don't have to go get a Bachelor of Science in nutrition or a master's level. They don't need that much detail, but they do need to understand what they're doing. If you want compliance with these guys, if you want these guys to truly get something out of your service, you need to give them this education. I think that's what's lacking so much, or people get so caught up in things that don't matter and these little minute details of what a meal plan is, and it just doesn't matter. And that's like the biggest thing you need to rectify, the biggest problem you need to sort out with clients straight off the bat, is let them know, like, these are just numbers and words on a page. It's the principles that we need to get down pat. And once you understand these principles, let the principles inform your habits. Let the principles inform your decision making. Let the principles decide what food choices you're going to make, and it makes their life so much easier.
Yeah, it goes back to also that all or nothing mentality. Like in today's society, you see all those reels and stuff about be harder, be disciplined, and all these kind of that mentality of like all or nothing. That's why people find meal plans so daunting, because they feel like once they enter this meal plan, or once they start a meal plan, they have to be absolutely perfect. That like perfectionist mentality that's like found with everyone. Like, Elon Musk works 36 hours a day, which is not possible, but he does anyway. That unrealistic mentality that to succeed or to be the best you possibly be, you have to be perfect all the time, all or nothing. And that's the kind of thing what we're talking about. Like that, in terms of a meal plan, if it's flexible, if it has those foods that you enjoy, and that if you that non-guilt mentality, if you muck up, if you stuff up, it's okay. That's something that you can implement just throughout the whole year. It's not these dieting phase or a meal plan phase. It's that stuff that you can have all year round. Just like you said, it's a foundation. You're instilling foundations that are lifelong, year-long, and will be what is the key to success, not this perfectionist mentality that people kind of have at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because just recently I took on a client and they sent me their previous meal plan from their health professional, and it was like all the meal plan was it was like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then on the side was snacks. And at each one, they just said, make sure you on your plate you have one serving of protein or one good protein source, two starchy carbohydrates, pack half your plate with vegetables, and have a tablespoon of sauce or whatever it is. And don't get me wrong, like I get that, and I do appreciate that at some points something like that can work. But for someone who has no nutrition knowledge or no background in that, that's really hard to follow. Like that's really difficult to follow. If you don't know what starchy vegetables are or starchy carbohydrates are, how are you picking two at every main meal? If you don't know what good lean proteins are, how are you picking them at every meal? If you don't know these things, how are you going to make so that type of meal plan from the get-go is destined to fail, and it's destined to put all these terrible mindsets and habits in place with someone. That type of meal plan just never ever works.
I know a few of my guys will just go out and buy the biggest plate they could possibly find, because of the concept is still there. Half your plate full of carbs, or buy the biggest plate they can get.
And I think this comes back to like a good point about calorie counting and macros. And I think we'll be the first one to say, I don't believe it's necessary. I don't think you need to obsessively count calories, know every single one of your macros. Like we don't give our clients calories and macros to count. I believe that's why they're paying us. We do that in the background, but I do think there is value in them understanding what type of calories and what type of macros make up their most favorite foods, so they can make a better informed choice. And you're not doing it so they can just weigh out every single food that they put in front of them. It's more so they can make the association with the principles. Okay, you know what, if we're trying to put this principle of protein pacing in place with my daily nutrition, what does that look like? Like how much protein do I need to put in at these times and around snack times and main meals? And what does that look like in main foods that I'm going to be eating? So say when I do go out to a restaurant and I want to enjoy something, how much can I gauge? Like, how can I gauge it? You know what? That's kind of 2 burgers worth. That's a pretty decent sized steak worth. That's a chicken palm worth. You need to understand that these numbers have a place. They have a place in educating people at the start. You by no means want to say to them, you need to be strictly counting calories and strictly counting macros for the rest of your life. That's so stupid and so not what you want to do. But they absolutely have a place so that they can reinforce the principles that we're trying to teach these guys.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, you know, we have the conversation with your clients all the time. Like they've gone to work, they've forgotten their snack. And I'll just say, like, listen, just go to the supermarket and kind of just, you know, obviously we want to like hit protein, fats and carbs for this snack, for instance, and then kind of give them the tools for them to be able to make those decisions and make those decisions with food that they enjoy. So, oh, I might get a yogurt, some pikelets, and a bit of peanut butter. Like, oh, perfect. Now you know the principles. Now you can kind of have that flexibility. And that just takes a whole level of stress off people, that they know that, you know, if they're not perfect or they didn't prepare on that day, that they can be flexible and still reach their goals and still follow the plan as best as possible. So that's, I think, this is the most important thing, is that when people get the foundations, the meal plan is just a simple guide for them to kind of understand what they're needing on a day-to-day basis.
Now, obviously, Jack's background is heavily involved with athletes. And I think it differs a little bit from the general population. And this next point I think is important to bring up, because I feel like a lot of this dislike towards meal plan and calorie count stems from this whole idea of weight loss and us always promoting weight loss and using tools to promote weight loss. I find with a lot of our athletes, it's the complete opposite. That's what we're trying to get across with them. It's the complete opposite of underfueling. And so many athletes underfuel so chronically, and it's a huge problem. I think LEA, low energy availability and relative energy deficiency in sport, is such a huge problem that we don't give enough credit to. And if you want to rectify that and you want to give these guys some meaningful services and something that's going to make a meaningful difference in not only their performance, their recovery, their training, but in their life overall and their overall mental and physical health, you need to instill this education in them. And they need to understand, you know what, filling up a tiny dessert plate with a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbs, and a little bit of fat, that's not enough calories to nourish your body adequately. They need to understand what calories are, what they do in their body, how they fuel their body, how they make them feel good, how they give these physiological systems life, and what happens when you take all that away and how you shut down all these systems over the long term. They need to understand that, so that they understand, hey, yes, you know what? I do need to put this good nourishment, this good nutrition into my body so that I can go out and perform at my training and do all of my recovery and get the best out of my work day. I need to put these calories in. So I feel like when we say these things and say, you know what, meal plans don't work and you can't be doing this calorie counting, it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying. But also on the other side, you need to teach these guys that nutrition is fuel and they need this to live their best life. And that's very hard to do unless they understand these concepts. And more often than not, when we see people who do not understand these concepts, rather than leading them down this path of extreme weight loss or whatever, just leads to extreme underfueling.
Yeah, I think especially in the world of nutrition, like people just become so one way. Like they're either really pro calorie counting or they're very much against it. Like there's always two sides, and they're always extremely one-sided and not flexible. And what we're saying is that, like, yes, you know, both have their negatives and positives, but coming to around the middle of like utilizing the knowledge and utilizing some of the tools we have, but also being flexible. Isn't that always the goal? Like, I think when we work with athletes during camp, obviously they're very strict. Obviously they need to make a weight. We want to make sure they're coming in healthy. So we're doing this. We're really focusing on what they're eating and kind of that kind of processes. But out of camp, I think when I work with people outside of camp, the one thing I work on is flexibility, listening to your body, listening to your hunger cues. So again, we're using those both principles from, like, say, the non-calorie counting way, and obviously the calorie counting during camp, but we're using both methods to kind of make this athlete as healthy as possible year round. So not demonizing anything, but kind of utilizing the strengths of both kind of approaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there's pros and cons to both approaches, but like you said, the end goal is to get these guys to be eating as intuitively, but you want them to be eating as intelligently as possible as well. Absolutely, you want them to enjoy all their best foods and enjoy their life and be able to go out and socially and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner out and still feel good. I think the fact of the matter is that there's a huge difference, especially if you're an athlete. And if you do eat a certain way, I'm not saying like you're eating bad foods like donuts or whatever and like are bad. If you like that food and you enjoy it, absolutely go eat it. But if there's certain habits where you eat certain foods to an excessive amount, it will have an effect on your body where you feel a certain way, and it won't be as conducive to your best performance, best recovery, or best energy levels. I think it's very hard to fix that if you don't have the education. And if you're constantly promoting this, always just go be intuitive, it can be problematic in that sense. Because at the end of the day, you want to get an athlete that feels great, that is able to go out and eat socially, that has a good, healthy relationship with food. We keep saying this, but to do that, they need to have this foundation, fundamental knowledge to make better choices so that they can go train really well and they can recover really well and have good energy throughout the day. Because we know when you get someone in that state and they do feel really great, it permeates into all other areas of their life. And a lot of that starts with having good nutrition. And I think we just need to dispel this myth that good nutrition is just that old bodybuilding way of eating every gram that's on your meal plan by the clock and eating chicken, rice, and vegetables. Absolutely not. You can have great nutrition enjoying all different types of foods. You don't have to eat it exactly to the minute, but having overall good habits and making overall good choices throughout your day will make you feel like an entirely different person.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the two biggest things that kind of I always speak about is obviously just like, probably the main thing is just flexibility, and then obviously understand the principles that we teach our guys. Those two things, if you get those two right, the longevity in your sport, the longevity of your health will just be seen. I think there's like, obviously a lot of people these days, like, like this kind of intuitive kind of concepts and stuff like that. I'll say, I'm really healthy, but unless we know, like, we're science-based, unless we can see some certain facts, you can't just say certain things. We need to understand the facts as well. So we can't just dispel all the science we know, all the facts we know, just because it suits a certain narrative these days. I think we need to balance the science, what we know, the foundations, what we know, but also this concept of listening to our bodies and being flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last thing before we finish off, and I want to say, is that one of the best examples I've found over the years is working with endurance athletes with this. Because when it comes to endurance competition or any training that's sustained for a long period of time, what we know in terms of the science is that unlike many other things in biology and nutrition, where we usually work on, say, like a grams per kilogram basis. So like, Jack, you weigh X amount of kilos. So your individual carbohydrate, protein, or fat needs will be X, Y, and Z based on the size of your human body, right? When it comes to sustained training in endurance, it doesn't seem to be like that. It seems that there are set rates that, the human body per hour can take up anywhere between 30, 60, 90, or top end at 120 grams per carbohydrates per hour. So I think it's a really interesting thing with these guys, because with the total amount of calories and workload that they're burning during training, obviously outside in camp, they just need to be getting so much good nutrition, so much good fuel. A lot of the time, what that looks like is eating all these foods that people will, quote unquote, say are bad, but you need to get that to fuel that person and give them good nutrition to allow them to get through that training. And endurance athletes, all the ones I work with, we promote that. We go outside, have that flexibility, because you're burning so many calories, you need to get all this good fuel in just to keep your physiological functions going, to keep everything good. But when it comes to that training, and anyone that has done like long distance endurance stuff, you will appreciate how important it is getting that nutrition right. Me and Loz always talk about on the endurance series, like for triathlons, nutrition is the fourth discipline in a triathlon. It really is, because the difference between getting your nutrition right and wrong is absolute night and day. And you see that when you're out there in races and in events when people bonk. And a lot of that has to do with they just didn't fuel their body properly. And then it always comes back, and I love using this as an example. Why did that person bonk? Is because they just didn't have the baseline fundamental nutrition knowledge. Elite level endurance athletes, yes, they've got a plan. They calculate how many like grams of carbohydrates and calories they need per hour. But that came off the back of years of trial and error and, being very, very specific. Okay, I'm trialing 30 grams of carbohydrates per hour. What does that look like? I'm trialing 60 grams. And then over time, as they get more comfortable with it, you don't have to think about it because you've made it a habit. You know what foods are 60 grams worth of carbohydrates. You know what food you need to eat to get 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So even though they can follow this extremely cool, flexible diet and still get all of their good nutrients and get all of the nutrition they need to fuel their body, they still have to follow this fairly rigid plan when it comes to their training. That all started by getting this foundation nutrition knowledge and understanding, okay, I need to hit these numbers. This is what it looks like in these foods. But you know what? Over time, I don't need to do that anymore because I understand what I'm trying to do. I understand the principles and I feel so much better for doing so. All right, let's finish this off here. So any final remarks, Jack, that you would say if people come up and they want to talk to you and say, you know what, I don't really want to follow a meal plan, it sucks, what would you say?
I'll say that's completely fair enough. You don't have to follow a meal plan, but just work with someone, ourselves or other practitioners. They're going to teach you the principles of nutrition, teach you the techniques to be able to, to fuel your body, to understand your nutrition needs for yourself. That's what I mean. Like, I think that, if you're going to work with someone who's going to help you, educate you through this process. Because I feel like, as we always talk about, education for yourself and understanding these kind of foundations is going to lead for you to be a healthier, happy person in general.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I would say that meal plans can absolutely suck. They absolutely can suck, but they also can be a very effective tool to help teach people these foundational principles and increase their nutrition literacy, which will ultimately lead them to making better nutrition choices. And I think when we say better nutrition choices, again, we're not saying better means eating just chicken, vegetables, rice. Better just means understanding how that flexibility works in with your schedule, your individual body, with your training, your recovery, whatever it is. You just need that baseline level of nutrition knowledge to be able to make those better choices. And I think meal plans, they can suck, but they can also be really, really effective if used properly.
Yeah, I think, some people have in the past using like bodybuilder or cookie cutter programs, and they've hated it. And I've had people come to myself and be very happy with the flexibility and the variety of food they get. So I guess just find someone that kind of aligns with your values and is going to spend the time to educate you as well as provide a plan that suits you. That's my advice.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think if you listen to that, if you agreed with us, if you disagreed with us. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Shoot us a DM on social media, send us an email. If there's any other topics you want us to discuss or talk about, let us know. But I think we'll wrap that one up there, Jack. Until next time.
Until next time. See you later.